Rough it up like a Humvee.
Take you for a ride, baby. From Watertown straight to Bridgetown. Go wine too fast, me, I beg you slow me down. I know you're ready for the action.
We coming back with a bang. Bang, bang, bang. Bring the thing, girl, now work the thing, yeah. Happy say everybody jam, yeah. Party swing, yeah, party in full swing.
All right, so welcome back, everyone. So we are dealing with an issue now that is very important to all of us, huh? And we're speaking about the minimum wage, the $3 increase in the minimum wage, which took effect on January 1st. We do have on the line this morning Labor Inspector Paula Achaibar. Ms. Achaibar, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you for having us, and a happy new year to you and to Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, and to you too, Ms. Achaibar. Well, let's get right into the meat of the matter, Ms. Achaibar. How many workers of Trinidad and Tobago are affected by this increase?
Approximately 190,000 workers have been affected by this new minimum wage that took effect from the 1st of January 2020.
What sort of response, if I can put it that way, or reports has your ministry been getting about the introduction of the minimum wage? Have you been receiving reports from employers, employees? How has that been going?
Well, what we have been receiving since the Minister of Finance would have announced the increase in the minimum wage in his budget presentation, we have had both employers and employees calling into the office to find out how things are going to run, when it's going to take effect from those who have been paying above the national minimum wage significantly would want to know how does that affect them in terms of do they have to increase by $3 additional as well. So we have had quite a bit of calls and persons seeking information from the ministry.
So is it safe to say that there have been mixed reviews to it?
Yes, mixed reviews because, again, it all depends on the business's ability to pay the additional increase in the minimum wage. Of course, it is law, so employers are aware that it is something that they can't get away from. They have to enforce. It's just that they now have to work their businesses in terms of how they do their profits and how they do their payments and how they do their accounting in order to ensure that they remain compliant with the legislation.
And Mr. Achaibar, that's a very significant point that you would have made there. So businesses are obligated to pay this new wage to workers?
Yes, they are, because it is required by law.
Yeah. And if they don't, if some of them decide, look, you see Mr. Achaibar and them at the ministry, I'm not paying that, Are there repercussions to it?
Yes, of course, there are repercussions. Now, if an employer, in the first instance, the Labor Inspectorate Unit will seek compliance. We work with the employers and employees in order to ensure compliance. Failing which, however, there are penalties that can be levied on the businesses that refuse to do it at the industrial court. So, as I mentioned, it is the law. It's not a favor that we're asking the employers. It is the law. And if the employer continues to be in violation of the law, in breach of the law by not paying the minimum wage and not paying other things, not paying overtime, not paying granting vacation and sick leave in certain sectors, then yes, there are penalties that can be levied at the industrial court.
What are the options, or via which means can employees, if they have to report or make a report, what are the options available to them? Via what means do they do that?
So first and foremost, anyone, both employer or employee, can walk into the offices. We have two main offices in Port of Spain on Duke Street, 50 to 54 Duke Street, and in San Fernando, 40 to 45 St. James Street. That's the first option. You can call us at 299-0300, option 3 for Port of Spain, and 285-5133, option 4 for San Fernando. Additionally, you can go on to the ministry's website at www.labor.gov.tt and you can do a complaint. There is a chat box that you can put a complaint in, or you can seek information from. And of course, we're on all social media platforms. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all the main social media platforms.
How do we identify a minimum wage worker?
So minimum wage workers can be found in various sectors. So those in the retail sectors, those working in supermarkets, those working in clothing stores, hardwares, jewelry stores, those in the catering industry. So those are the roti shops, the restaurants, the bakeries, security officers, the dry goods stops, bookstores. The list is not exhaustive, but yes, the minimum wage workers work in the retail sector, they work in the catering sector, the petrol filling stations, the agriculture undertakings, laundries, all of those are categories of minimum wage workers.
Yeah. So the list is long because I know that there may be people who are looking at us right now and are thinking, well, I just have a small business, you know. Yes, I'm employing 5 workers, 10 workers, 3 workers. And they may feel that they don't have to pay the minimum wage because it's a small business. It's my business. I'm self-employed.
That is true. And the Labor Inspectorate unit is there. Well, we consider these small businesses the informal economy, the informal sectors. So yes, even though you're a small business and you may have 1 or 2 employees, the law indicates that the national minimum wage, which is now $20.50, has to be paid to your workers.
All right, so let's get a little deeper because again, people are going to ask, so I have employed my brother, my niece, my cousin, my aunt, my uncle. Does this also apply to them?
Yes, of course. It applies to any worker in Trinidad and Tobago. And please let me emphasize, this is also applicable to our migrant population. Now, it matters not whether the person is here legally or illegally. That person is considered, that migrant worker is considered a worker. And once you're a worker, you are entitled to the same terms and conditions as a national of Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah. So it doesn't matter what nationality that the person is. As we discussed earlier, as an employer, you are really obligated to give the employee this new increased wage. What are the new rates of pay for the minimum wage workers?
So the new rate of pay is $20.50 per hour. And that works out to be on a daily rate. Now, a normal working day is 8 hours. So for a normal working day, a worker is entitled to no less than $164 once they've worked an 8-hour day. For the week, they're entitled to $820 per week. And for the month, if you're being paid monthly, it's $3,553.33. And that is for a normal working week, which is 40 hours. Of course, if persons work more than 40 hours, they're entitled to overtime, a time and a half for the first 4 hours, double for the second 4, and triple for any hours after that.
Mr. Achaibar, I see some employers, they're rubbing their foreheads like this morning, you know. You've given them a lot to think about. So again, and I don't mean to belabor the point, but I'm just going to ask because I know how people are in Trinidad and Tobago. Can the employer and the employee have a negotiation and aimed at not paying the minimum wage?
No, they can negotiate for, yes, their terms and conditions. However, it's the law. The minimum wage orders is law, and there cannot be any negotiation to deny that worker what they're entitled to under the legislation.
Yeah. Now, who ensures that workers receive this new wage?
So the Labor Inspectorate unit of the Ministry of Labor is the enforcement arm that has the responsibility for ensuring that employers know what their obligations are and workers know what their rights are.
Yeah. I believe that we did touch on this, but I'm going to ask it again so that as we dig a little deeper into this, what are some of the obligations of employers to be compliant with the new Minimum Wage Act?
So, of course, to pay the minimum wage of $20.50 per hour, to maintain records, and when we say records, we're looking at attendance records, wage records, pay-slips, anything that can show that the employer is in compliance with the legislation.
But again, you may have people who are saying, well, I have a small business. You want me to engage in all of this paperwork? I just do not have the resources to do that?
Well, at the Ministry of Labour, the Labour Inspectorate Unit, we work with the employers as well. So we're not here to take a big stick approach. We work with you to ensure compliance. So even if it means doing something simple, showing you how to maintain simple records, we do that. We give you samples, we give you brochures, we help you we help you do your calculations if necessary, just to ensure that the employers remain compliant.
Yeah. So is it then, Ms. Achaibar, that from January 1st, as we stated, that this increase has gone into effect? So is it then that employers are to pay this new wage with immediate effect?
Yes, that the legislation has been enacted and gazetted. The new minimum wage has taken effect with effect from January the 1st, and it happens immediately. It should be implemented immediately.
So even if that I would have said that people do not have a good record when it comes to record keeping and writing down things and putting things in order, even in that situation, employers have to pay these rates.
Yes, they do. And the maintenance of that record protects the employer. It reflects that you are doing what you need to do to be compliant. And if those records are not implemented, that is something that, as I mentioned, we will assist the employer in implementing and maintaining.
Yeah. All right. Let's get back to the migrant worker. Because as you know, Ms. Achaibar, there have been some issues with some migrant workers where, to put it bluntly, some of them continue to be threatened and abused in certain ways and are being threatened in certain ways. And they may feel that they are not in a good position to speak to the employer or to negotiate with the employer when it comes to this new minimum wage. And they may not want to, because there's a level of fear that they could or would be fired. What are their options?
So their options, of course, as I mentioned, they are entitled to the same terms and conditions as a national, simply because they are workers in Trinidad and Tobago. The Minimum Wages Act does speak to the victimization of anyone trying to get their rights, or even reporting a matter to the Labour Inspectorate Unit. So there are unions, and there is the Labour Inspectorate Unit that is here to protect those migrant workers, those vulnerable workers as well. So what we would encourage, if it is that you have a conversation with the employer as a migrant worker, and you're not getting any headway in terms of that employer paying you the national minimum wage, then they can report it to us, and we will go in and have a chat with the employer.
Yeah. Let me get back to a question that we dealt with a little earlier. Is it that the calls that the ministry have been getting, would you say they, well, I suspect there may be an increase, but how do we measure that increase? Is it a lot of calls that you have been getting?
Well, as I mentioned, since the Minister of Finance did his budget presentation, we have been receiving calls. We do have a database where we monitor all incoming calls to the Labour Inspectorate Unit. So yes, there are some statistics that we can probably look at later down to see the greater influx. But yes, we do expect that there would be a greater influx of calls, because persons just want to, most employers would call just to ensure that they are doing what they're mandated to do by the legislation.
Yeah.
And of course, employees calling just to ensure that they're entitled.
Let's speak a little bit about the powers of the labour inspectors. What are they?
So the powers of the labour inspectors are to enter establishments and conduct routine or complaint investigations. Part of that now is to speak to the employer, speak to the workers, and look at the records, examine those records, it gives us a comprehensive picture of what's happening at the establishment. We can also seek a warrant from the industrial court if we are denied entry into the business. Now, as I mentioned, we can enter the business at any reasonable time during the normal working hours. So we can seek a warrant from the industrial court to enter and to seize records if necessary in order to ensure compliance. And we also refer disputes to the industrial court for those employers who have failed to correct their violations.
Mr. Achaibar, are workers, let's say what we call the market, the green markets, are they also entitled to this new minimum wage?
Yes, they are. All workers in Trinidad and Tobago. Once you're a worker, once you share an employment relationship with an employer, you are entitled to the increase in the minimum wage.
Yeah, because I see that you also have an entire list, and you did touch on some of it: supermarkets, variety stores, hardware stores, mall kiosks, fast food outlets, restaurants, retail store, dry goods shop, stationery store, electrical store, drug store, garment store, bookstore, flower shop, security firm, farm, construction company, factory, or type of establishments. Mr. Achaibar, anything else you'd like to tell us before you leave us this morning?
Well, just to reiterate to Trinidad and Tobago that the Labour Inspectorate is here for both the employer and the employees. Again, you can contact us at 299-0300, option 3 for Port of Spain, 285-5133, option 4 for San Fernando. We're on all the social media platforms. All the information that I've given today, as well as copies of the legislation, is available on the ministry's website at www.labour.gov.tt.
Mr. Achaibar, this minimum wage thing is a serious thing. They can't get away from it, you know. You can run, but you can't hide, right? Mr. Achaibar, it's a pleasure. It was a pleasure speaking with you this morning. Thank you very much for all of the information. I tried to dig a little deeper because I know that people are going to have all of these questions concerning the new minimum wage. And we do appreciate the information that you would have shared with us this morning. Bye for now.
Thank you for having us. Take care.
All right. So it's time for a quick break again. We do have this image for you. We're coming back, everybody.
We got spark of fire. All the pretty girls in the set, come a little closer.
Let me take you for a ride.